At my 30th birthday party, my father leaned toward my brother while everyone was singing happy birthday and whispered 6 words I was never supposed to hear. Take her phone before midnight. I kept smiling. I even blew out the candles. But under the table, my fingers tightened around my phone because I already knew there was something on it my father desperately wanted to destroy. My name is Maya Collins, and until that night, I believed my family had one simple rule. Whatever happened inside our house, stayed inside our house. My father, Richard, was the kind of man everyone admired. He owned a successful construction company, donated money to local charities, and never missed an opportunity to remind people that family came first. My mother, Elaine, had been gone for 11 years. My brother Ethan was 4 years older than me and had always defended Dad. That night, the restaurant was crowded with relatives, old family friends, and coworkers from my father's company. There were balloons behind my chair, a chocolate cake in front of me, and a slideshow of childhood photographs playing on a television near the bar. Everything looked perfect, until Dad leaned toward Ethan. I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough. Take her phone before midnight. Ethan looked at him. Then he looked at me. For half a second, our eyes met. I smiled at him as though I hadn't noticed. He looked away. My father raised his glass and said, "To my daughter, 30 years old and finally becoming the woman your mother would have been proud of." Everyone applauded. I nearly dropped my fork. My mother? He hadn't spoken about her like that in years, and he certainly didn't know what was sitting inside my phone. 3 hours earlier, I'd received an email from an address I hadn't seen since I was 19, my mother's old email address. The subject line said, "For Maya, open at midnight." I hadn't opened the attachment. I was too frightened. Instead, I spent the evening staring at the notification and wondering how an account that had been inactive for more than a decade could possibly send me anything. Then, during dinner, Dad told Ethan to take my phone. Suddenly, everything made sense. I slipped my phone into my purse. Ethan leaned toward me. "Maya, Dad wants to talk to you outside." "About what?" "Just come with me." I laughed. "It's my birthday. He can talk to me here." Ethan's face changed. For the first time in my life, my brother looked genuinely afraid. Then Dad called him again. They whispered. I couldn't hear the second conversation, but I saw Ethan glance at my purse. That was enough. I stood up. I need some air. I walked toward the restroom instead of the exit. Behind me, I heard Ethan's chair scrape against the floor. I locked myself inside a stall and pulled out my phone. The email was still there. 11:37 p.m. 29 minutes until midnight. I opened the message. There was no text, only a video attachment. The file name was, "Maya, if Richard tells you I left, don't believe him." My hands began shaking. I pressed play. The screen went black for several seconds. Then my mother's face appeared. She looked younger than I remembered, tired, frightened, and sitting somewhere I didn't recognize. She looked directly at the camera. "Maya, if you're watching this, something has happened that I prayed would never happen." I stopped breathing. She said my father's name. Then she said something that changed everything. "Your father didn't lose me. He made sure you believed I abandoned you." I watched the video twice, then a third time. My mother explained that 11 years earlier, she had discovered Dad was hiding something from the family. Not an affair, not another child, something worse. He had been secretly selling information from his construction company to a competitor and using fake invoices to cover the payments. When my mother confronted him, he threatened her. She tried to leave with me, but before she could, Dad told everyone she had become unstable and abandoned her children. I had believed that lie for 11 years. At the end of the video, Mom said, "There is proof. I left it somewhere your father would never think to look. The instructions will reach you at midnight." The video ended. I stared at the screen. 11:43 p.m. 7 minutes. Then my phone vibrated. A new message appeared. Unknown number. Don't trust Ethan. I froze. My brother knocked on the restroom door. "Maya?" I didn't answer. "Maya, open the door." I put my phone into my pocket. When I finally stepped outside, Ethan was standing alone. "Where's Dad?" "He left." "Why?" "He said he had to make a call." I studied my brother's face. "Ethan, why do you want my phone?" His expression collapsed. "I don't." "Dad does." He looked down. That was the first time my brother didn't defend our father. Instead, he whispered, "You shouldn't have opened that email." My stomach dropped. "How do you know about it?" Ethan looked toward the restaurant entrance. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Because Dad knew it was coming." 11:52 p.m. I asked him what was happening. He told me Dad had known for weeks that my mother's old account had been recovered. He had hired someone to get access to it, but the person couldn't delete the scheduled message because the recovery system had locked the account. The only thing Dad could do was stop me from seeing it. My phone. That was why. Not because of the phone itself, because of what it contained. Then Ethan finally told me the part he had been hiding. He had known about Mom's disappearance. Not everything, but enough. When he was 18, Dad showed him a letter and told him Mom had left willingly. Ethan believed him. Years later, he discovered the letter had been forged. He confronted Dad, and Dad made him promise never to tell me. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ethan started crying. "Because I was scared." "Of Dad?" He nodded. Then my phone vibrated again. 11:57 p.m. A new attachment appeared. A photograph. It showed my mother standing outside an old roadside motel. Beside her was a woman I recognized immediately, my father's former business partner. Under the photograph was one sentence. "Storage 214. The key is under the blue flower pot." Then another message arrived. "Open the box after midnight." My father suddenly appeared at the restaurant entrance. He no longer was smiling. "Maya," he said. Everyone inside could see him. "Give me your phone." I laughed nervously. "Why?" "Because I know what you've been looking at." The room became silent. Ethan stepped between us. Dad stared at him. "You promised me." Ethan shook his head. "I promised because I was 18. I'm not 18 anymore." Dad's face hardened. "Maya, your mother was sick. She made up stories. Everything she told you was a lie." I looked at him. "Then why are you afraid of my phone?" He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. 12 a.m. My phone chimed. A new message appeared. It wasn't from my mother. It was from her former attorney. "Your mother asked me to send this if you ever received her recording. The original evidence is in storage 214. Richard Collins does not own it. You do." My father lunged toward me. Ethan grabbed his arm. Security rushed over. My father began shouting that I was confused, that my mother had manipulated me, that the messages were fake. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was thinking about the blue flower pot. The next morning, Ethan and I drove to the storage facility. The key opened storage 214. Inside were boxes filled with photographs, handwritten notes, company records, old contracts, and dozens of letters. There was also a small recorder. I pressed play. My mother's voice filled the empty storage unit. She described everything she'd discovered, But there was one thing I hadn't expected. She wasn't trying to destroy Dad. She had spent 11 years trying to protect us from him. The records proved Dad had falsified company accounts and threatened employees who tried to expose him. The original evidence also showed that my mother's disappearance had been part of a legal protection arrangement. She hadn't abandoned us. She'd been forced to leave temporarily after receiving threats, and she spent years trying to build enough evidence to come back safely. But she never got the chance. She had died 6 months before that birthday. The attorney had kept the evidence because Mom had specifically instructed him to release it only when I was old enough to handle the truth. I sat on the concrete floor and cried. Not because I had lost my mother that day. I had lost her 11 years earlier. I cried because I finally understood that she had never stopped trying to come home. 2 weeks later, investigators contacted me. The evidence from Storage Unit 214 was enough to reopen several old cases involving my father's company. Ethan cooperated fully. My father tried to blame everyone else. He blamed Mom. He blamed Ethan. He blamed me. But eventually, the records told their own story. His company collapsed within months. People who had been afraid to speak for years finally came forward. And I learned something else. My father had never wanted my phone because he feared what was on it. He wanted it because he feared I would finally learn who my mother really was. 6 months after my birthday, I stood outside my mother's old house, holding the key she'd left behind. Ethan stood beside me. Neither of us said anything for a while. Then he smiled. 30 wasn't such a bad birthday after all. I laughed through my tears. No, it was the first honest one. That night, I placed my phone on the kitchen table. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what might appear on the screen. I looked at the photograph of my mother I'd saved from the video. She was smiling. Not the frightened smile from the recording, a real one. I finally understood that the truth doesn't always arrive when we're ready for it. Sometimes it arrives when everything else has fallen apart. And sometimes the thing your family desperately wants to take from you is exactly the thing that can finally set you free.